This is TWiT.
So I feel like this isn't the first that we've heard about this, but my story of the week is about this kind of this moment right now. There's a growing energy around empowering workers to kind of take a fresh look at where they are, where they're working, and do so through the lens of through equality, worth, are you getting paid enough, all this kind of stuff. Lorenzo Francesca-Bicchierai, who we've had on the show many times from Vice's Motherboard, actually wrote about this movement, and a few things are going on with this story. So we'll start with a subreddit, which you may or may not have heard of, called Antiwork or Antiwork. It's been getting a lot of attention lately. I know I've heard Leo talk about it on the shows from time to time. I've been following the subreddit just because I'm fascinated by what's going on here right now. But in this subreddit, Reddit users are sharing screenshots, they're sharing stories, whole bunch of insight into some of the sometimes shady things that employers are doing or with their employees at their jobs, right? And this subreddit really is all about employees kind of finding the support that they need in each other to say, hey, my job sucks, and here's the reason why. Here's what my boss did this last time, and the community rallies around that person and says, okay, well, there's a lot more for you out there. Why don't you just quit? And so there's a lot of posts around sharing their DMs with their bosses, screenshots showing that their bosses are demanding that they work when they aren't actually required, and making ultimatums, threatening them. Ultimately, the employees are upvoted on Reddit by a large degree when they show in the thread how they've resigned, how they said, oh yeah, well, take this job and shove it. They kind of spell that out. Everybody, pats them on the back. It's a great thing. The community really is empowering other members to just realize that those employees have rights, and sometimes those rights are impeded on by the people who employ them. So that seems to be what the subreddit is all about. I don't know. Have you do you use Reddit at all, Micah? Is this a subreddit that you're familiar with?
No, I'm not really a Redditor, but I have heard of this subreddit in particular. It's popped up in the news a couple of times, so I'm not surprised, that there's a link there. Pretty popular one.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of attention right now, and I think also specifically because we're also talking a lot about in the technology world, employment in general, but in technology and journalism. There's a lot of energy around unionizing, workers' rights, in all of these different facets. So I think it's kind of like a perfect storm, right? All that stuff is happening. It's already on our minds and our attentions to make sure that people that these workplaces are more inclusive, are more worker, friendly to their workers. And this subreddit is kind of like a part of that movement. I think it's kind of attached to it. Well, now there are more and more reports showing how fax machines, which I kind of forgot that, do businesses still have fax machines? Maybe they need to. Maybe for that one time that they need to receive a fax. But probably more commonly, printers, receipt printers, things like that, at many different random businesses are suddenly having anti-work manifestos being printed out on them. So imagine a boss comes into work, flips on the lights, looks over at the receipt printer, and there's a long sheet of paper, and it's a total manifesto just waiting to be discovered, probably by the staff, but also by the boss, right? It says things like, are you being underpaid? You have a protected legal right to discuss your pay with your coworkers. Poverty wages only exist because people are willing to work for them. Things like this that, a worker might read and be like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize that I could talk about my pay with my coworkers. My boss said that that's not okay to do. Turns out you have a legal right to do that. No one seems to know where these printouts are actually coming from. It could be, maybe it's an employee that works there that's pulling off a prank that's actually, part of the Antiwork subreddit, and so is printing these out to see what happens. Maybe it's a wide-scale effort on the part of people from the subreddit to filter out this information and this knowledge to kind of spread the knowledge around what the anti-work movement is all around. Could be someone setting up the subreddit, right? To say like, hey, this subreddit is doing some really shady things. They're putting their manifesto all over the place. Let's get some attention on this and put pressure on Reddit to shut it down. I just think it's an interesting kind of illustration of where we're at right now with work, especially in light of where we're at right now with the coronavirus. You know, I mean, we've heard so many stories. Like if you go out to restaurants, like I've gone to many restaurants, they all have help wanted signs. They're all struggling to get people to work there. And I think it really just seems indicative or representative of the moment we're at right now, where employees were kind of forced into a position to where they had to step away from their normal. And now coming back, they're like, well, wait a minute, maybe there should be a new normal. Maybe that doesn't work for me anymore, or whatever the reasons or the rationale is. But I don't know. What do you think about all this?
So obviously the hacking is of issue. Trying to find ways to go about doing this that circumvent what's supposed to be done. That's no good. But in terms of sort of this movement and this conversation, I do like the idea of questioning, hey, maybe when things do get back to normal, there can be a change in the way that things are done, where people are realizing, because it should never be the case that someone can make more money by not working and using the programs that we have available to help people who are unemployed. That there tells you that we're not paying people enough money if that is the case. If there are situations where someone realizes, wow, I am getting paid more money to not work than I am getting paid to actually go to work, then we need to do better. And like companies need to do better. They need to be better, because that should not be the case. That it should not work that way. So people asking for like the basic benefits, the basic rights that they have to be treated like a human being. I can remember working at a place where because I just had this kind of flashback the other day. I was at the store and saw Theraflu, and I had this, it was just this moment where I had this flashback of warming up in my work microwave my cup of Theraflu, because I was sick at work, because I had to be there, because saying you were sick and staying home was not officially a no-no, but certainly unofficially a no-no, and was one of these things where, an unspoken agreement that there's really no finding coverage in that job. And if there was finding coverage, then it was your job to do alone. And one would argue that the way that that's supposed to work is that if you have a manager, it's the manager's job to find coverage for you if you're ill. Not that you need to call around and beg 6 people and tell one of them you'll massage their feet if they will come in for you and work for you because you're not feeling well. So all of these things and the way that the system is set up right now, it needs to change. And if going into a Walgreens pharmacy and seeing that there's only one person working and that the place hasn't been restocked in 9 months because people are realizing that they don't have to be treated like animals is the way that we make change happen, then that's fine. Don't hack a company or receipt printers or something like that. But I'm certainly all for people getting paid what they're worth and being respected as human beings in every situation.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you just said, right? Like the hacking of the printers, obviously, that can be a pretty shady direction to go down. But but I can appreciate the sentiment behind it. I can appreciate the sentiment of here's a way to get direct access to people who might not have thought otherwise about is my situation here fair? Like, is it fair to me and my coworkers? Am I being taken advantage of? I didn't really think about that, but now that you put it this way, now I'm going to if that's the impetus for them to reevaluate and recognize that, hey, they're worth more than they're being paid. They're worth more than they're being treated. then, I can fully get behind that. But, maybe hacking printers to do the job isn't the right approach, but it's pretty effective, for whatever that's worth, I suppose. So anyways, I think it's an interesting story. And there we go. And by the way, hacking insecure printers is nothing new. It's not like this is the first time we've ever seen something like this. It's just how it's being used to spread this message, I think, is pretty fascinating.